Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, the markets have been going crazy. And the craziest thing about these markets is that the Bitcoin markets are not even the craziest thing in the world, right? They're not even the craziest thing. I'm going to talk to you about some news events that have happened in the last couple of hours. We're not even talking about the last day, necessarily like the last full day, the last 3 days, or the last week, or even the last month, but just the last couple of hours. I'm going to mention to you certain fun facts, just so you guys feel a lot better and are actually aware of what is happening. Okay, so listen to this, Caspa holder. So China's stock market suffers the worst single day crash since 2008. Okay, the Chinese stock market, when it initially opened, fell 10% at open. Okay, the Taiwan stock index falls over 10% at open. The Taiwan stock market trading was halted, circuit breaker triggered. Okay. Now, a few other things. The UK and German stock futures fall over 4%. The Japan suspends their 225 stock futures trading due to circuit breaker, right? And yeah, Bitcoin has gone down thousands of dollars in just the last couple of hours. So what does that mean? Well, that means obviously Caspa is going to suffer, right? Caspa is going to suffer. But when we look at it even from a daily perspective, let's just say the last 2 days, the last two daily candles, we have gone down, 13%, not ideal, but when you put it into perspective compared to the other big markets that have, 10, 100 times more money, it's actually not that bad. It's actually not that bad. And I actually do believe in the bigger picture that there will be a transfer of wealth going from, stocks and indexes and all this stuff more so to crypto. Now, I'm not saying all that money that's getting lost and people are taking profits are going to go straight to crypto, but I actually do think in the bigger picture, this is going to be good. Now, even in terms of technical analysis, right, nothing suggested that Caspa is going to be necessarily pumping, right? If we go all the way back up here to, let's just say mid-December, January time, we can see we were creating some type of support. We're trying to go up and we're failing. We smashed right below it. Then we went back up to retest over here. We can see we closed below, and then the next few weeks we sold off once again. And then you guessed it, very, very similar story where we pretty much attempted for 2 to 3 weeks trying to get back over the 8 cent zone consistently. We failed, and now once again we have a very, very similar boat of, kind of just retesting off of these kind of bottoms and looking to be pushing down further, right? So not very, very ideal when it comes to people that want things to pump. Now, some people think, that it's Mexi that's destroying Caspa, that it is other exchanges. And man, let me tell you, respectfully, you guys are wrong. It is none of those. It is just simply, the markets are getting liquidated. It is just more rough times. The world is going a little bit crazy. And even just in terms of regular technical analysis, right? Bitcoin, ladies and gentlemen, Bitcoin, we look at Bitcoin over here, right? Bitcoin is looking to be forming some kind of higher lows on a higher time frame, right? So we have a bottom here, we have a top, and we somewhere over here, generally speaking, right, without going too much detail, we're going to be looking to be forming some kind of higher low, right? So, still an uptrend, right? Still an uptrend. We can see we're creating a staircase upwards, but the moment we're at right now is when it looks scary, okay? But when you look at the bigger picture, it is still bullish. People always think the markets are done for when, even like it was over here, people thought the markets were done when we go to something like the weekly candles. I remember, ETF came out. Oh my God, we pumped. It pumped and then it sold off. And then people, once it was down here, people are like, oh, we're going back down to 30K, 20K, 15K. Markets are over. Same thing here when we're consolidating for weeks. The weeks that were red, oh, it's over. The weeks that are green, we're back. The weeks that were red, it's over. And it's just the same thing, right? I personally did get a little bit scared for the first, let's just say, just the first few hours when we did go back down to 49K. But a day later, by the end of the week, we actually closed really, really nice, right? We went from 49K and we closed, pretty much $10,000 higher. And I was actually thinking to myself, like, damn, this candle, right? Not only did it sweep this low over here, but actually created a very nice bullish candle, which then eventually went to an order block over here, and then we went up higher. So, I'm just going to the detail because I do want to tell you what the picture is right now. Now, in terms of something like Caspa and Bitcoin, which I'll talk about Caspa just in detail in a second, right? We are sweeping potential lows, ladies and gentlemen, for Bitcoin, right? We have swept some lows right over here. This point, this daily candle, which is the weekly, which is the monthly, which is also the quarterly. So there may be a little bit of a retracement back up. Now, I'm not saying it's going to retrace a lot. I'm not saying this is the reversal, but do not, be surprised if we actually kind of consolidate, maybe dip a little bit lower and then pull back a couple of thousand. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this because Bitcoin's ahead of the snake, and this is all super, super, super relevant. Okay. So if Bitcoin does pull back, there could be a couple of areas, right? We could see 82,000, and we could even see it potentially go to somewhere this wick over here. This wick over here of 86,000. Doesn't necessarily mean, right, even if we go to something like 86,000, that we're going to stay there for a long time. Especially if we don't stay there for a long time, it just means we're just going to crash even further. And especially if we would also close below the 82K mark. But we could see something like this before we go lower, or we could actually simply just sell off, maybe go to 72, 73K, and then get some type of bounce back, right? But I'm just saying that is a possibility. So with that being said, right, what does that mean for Caspa? Well, if I'm looking at Caspa, right, if Bitcoin were to have some kind of pullback, let's say, then we could see, levels of it going back to, roughly 6 cents, a little bit higher, right? I would say around the 6 cent area would be the first area I'd be looking for. The second area would be, potentially going upwards of, 6.5 cents, maybe a little bit higher than that before we would pull back down. Now, if we were completely going to go up higher, let's say Bitcoin did go to 86K, then maybe we go back up to just slightly over 7 cents into this weekly candle before we sell on further, right? Because this is a weekly institutional candle right over here. So, I'm just saying it's possible. But if the markets are very, very bearish and there's zero momentum, then we will just be continuing to sell off. Now, the question is, ladies and gentlemen, when will it finally reverse? When will things look finally good? Well, unfortunately, when we go to a quarterly candle, right? When we go to a quarterly candle, there is a 3-month institutional candle right over here at roughly 2.5 cents to 3.5 cents, right? So unfortunately for that context, right, it is not looking super, super good. It is not very, very ideal. And of course, we don't want that to necessarily happen unless we're still believers in Caspa in the bigger picture, and we want these discount prices. Okay. Right. So if you are, it depends. It depends on your perspective. Some people probably bought in at 12 cents, at 20 cents, people that bought in at 15 cents, let's say 10 cents, right? If it comes back to like 2.5, you're down 75% of your position. People are not going to be happy. Some people don't have more money to invest. Some people are just mentally drained. It's not looking good, but I'm just saying, I'm just reporting what I see. We do have this support over here where we could see a little bit of a bounce back, but the thing is, it is like the top of the support, right? This is the top of what was used to be a resistance, now turning into support, which usually doesn't mean, right away when we tap off the top of something, we bounce up, right? Usually means we actually go a little bit lower. So we could even see it go down to, even if things look good, 3.5 to, roughly just a little bit over 4 cents before we would pull back. So that is just the reality of the markets right now. The good thing is that we are having a lot of imbalance. So imbalance means that there is a lack of support and resistance. And this works like a double-edged sword, right? So here's the thing. We had imbalance over here when Caspa pumped from, let's just say, 5 cents all the way to 15, right? Imbalance. But the thing is, there's also imbalance when it's being sold. So when things do start pumping, which they will, right? Let's just say hypothetically Caspa bottoms out at 4 cents, then Caspa will actually retrace back to 11 to 12 cents very, very quickly before then it slows down, maybe a little bit of sell off, and before we get back into this key zone. If you really, really want me to be bullish, like 100%, we have to reclaim the 11-cent mark. Until then, we are in pretty bearish territory. And obviously there will be zones that we can start reclaiming on the smaller time frame, which, first of all, for me to even consider us being bullish, I would need to start seeing, weekly candles starting to close above these highs over here. Let me just do this. So let's just say, whatever the reversal starts now, I would want to see weekly candles close, above this zone over here, something like this. And then again, higher and higher, and then continuing to go higher, right? So we have something like this. We have this high over here. We have this high over here. I would want new weekly candles printing above those highs, reclaiming territory, closing strong, creating we have a high over here, a high over here. So creating some type of like, structure where we go down like this, up like this, down like this, then also creating, higher lows. And that's what needs to happen if you really want me to start being bullish. But until then, there is nothing, right? We do have the big news that comes out in, on May 5th. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing really worth reporting in terms of, news itself from Caspa directly. So yeah, just be careful, pretty bearish times right now. Great for accumulation, great for buying opportunities. But those that are not looking to be doing that, then it is going to be a little bit rough, at least for another couple more weeks. That is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.